This week's lab, we're going to actually start looking at the different types of life here on planet Earth. So I always get really excited by this lab. This is a lab that normally we would be using microscopes a lot. And I feel bad that you don't have enough opportunity to actually be looking through microscopes, because I think it's tremendously fun. But I will be making sure that the links that are in this week's lab activities are to really nice YouTube videos of microscopic stuff. Still not the same thing. But from my point of view, when we're looking through the microscope at these things, it is as if we're some giant alien monster and we're looking down at like the plains of Africa, you know? And so just like if we were a giant monster looking at Africa, we'd see lions that are predators, we'd see zebras that are prey items, we'd see them eating the grasses and stuff like that. Well, the bacteria and the protistans that we're looking at today, many of them play similar roles. They're just really tiny. But before we do any of that, I want you guys to know for next week's quiz all about the different levels of classification of life. And humans, we like to put things into categories, right? When you think about different mammals, and if I ask you out of all the wild animals that you know of, which ones are like cats? You'd go, oh, well, lions and tigers and leopards and jaguars, they're like cats, right? We like to group things together. We wouldn't put wolves and lions to be very similar, and yet we think of them as kind of similar because they are both carnivores. So when humans started classifying everything, that was our first approach to science, is just naming things and classifying them. And one of the things that we needed to do was create a classification system. And that's what we're looking at here. When we start off with all of life just falls into just being life. So all of life would start, I don't know, I did not mean to do whatever that was that I did. Oh, heavens. Now what do I do? There we go. Okay, let's get out of there. I don't want to see my words. Okay. So all of life would be up here. Up here is everything that's life. And the first thing we did was divide life into domains. We're going to talk a little bit about them. And there are 3 domains of life right now. I don't know why there's 4 holes, right? And out of all the domains of life, then we separated them out even more. Like we've got animals and plants, and we're going to learn some of those today. And then out of all the animals on planet Earth, you know, coral is an animal. That's nutty, right? Coral's an animal, right? But certainly we don't think that coral belongs in the same classification as a giraffe. So we started separating out even animals into different smaller categories called phyla. Phylum is one, phyla is plural, and on and on. Now, you need to know this: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. You need to know all that. And here's the way I remember it. I remember it actually 2 different ways. One way is, do koalas prefer chocolate or fruit, generally speaking? Okay, so domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay, so that's one way to remember it. Look at how cute the mama koala with the 2 baby koalas. That's just, you're so cute. Okay, the other way that I remember it is this, which is, wait, let's see it one more time. One more time. Okay. Do kings play chess on fat gophers' stomachs? So still, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species, right? So pick your way, because that's going to be a question on next week's quiz. It'll be like, which of these lists is in the right order? Let's get back to the system of classification. Linnaeus, I don't actually know very much about Linnaeus, but we have already jumped way down. We've gone from domain down to kingdom, domain to kingdoms. Oops. Domain to, oh, okay, I don't know what's happening. Okay, there you go. All the way down to kingdoms. So all of these things are in the animal kingdom. And like wolves and dogs, you're like, okay, those seems pretty closely related to each other. But wait, they're not very closely related to bats or lobsters or spiders or what? Okay, so luckily for us, science has come up with a way of narrowing things down. So the first thing that we did was we decided, okay, how many of these things have got a backbone and a skull? All of the things that have got a backbone and a skull, raise your hand, okay? All these guys raise their hands. And then everything that doesn't have a backbone or a skull, it will go into different phyla, right? So spiders, they go into a different phylum. This is a jellyfish, goes into a different phylum. Lobster goes into a different phylum. Now, out of all the things with a backbone and a skull, that includes fish and crocodiles and sharks and stuff like that, how many of them are mammals? So all of these things are mammals, right? Now, out of all of the mammals, how many of these will we categorize as being carnivores? Okay, well, wolves are carnivores, coyotes, dogs, foxes, that looks like an African wild dog, bears, I don't know why they don't have a lion on here, but that's some kind of a small cat. Great. All of those belong into the category of carnivores. So you notice that koala bears, they must fall into a different order. That's an echidna. Skunks, they fall into a different order. Bunny rabbits, bats, they are in different orders. This is just the order carnivore. Now we have just the dog-like things, the canidae, and out of all the canids, we've got, African wild dog, coyote, domestic dog, wolf, and then the genus Canis, that gets rid of our foxes. Foxes have their own genus, and then we get down to species. That's genus Canis lupus. All right. So one of the things that I want you to know from here, you don't need to know what is a carnivore. We're going to get to animals. We're just talking about this system of classification. And this is our way of starting with a big category and narrowing it down, narrowing it down, narrowing it down. And that just allows us to think about life in a meaningful way. One of the things you should notice is if something is falling into the same genus as another animal, then we know, because of the way the system is organized, everything in this genus, they all have the same family, order, class, phylum, right? So if you know the order of the do kings play chess on fat gophers' stomachs, if you know that order, you know that if there are two animals that are in the same family, then they are also in the same order, class, phylum, kingdom. Okay, that'll be a question on next week's quiz. So here we've got the leopard. Is this a jaguar or a leopard? Panthera pardus. Oh, I should know this. I'm so sorry. We'll call it a leopard. Anyway, is Panthera pardus. There's also the mountain lion, which is another kind of Panthera, right? So we start off really big and we get more and more narrow. And by the way, right here, the carnivores, the dogs were there, but they ended up in the family Canidae, right? And all of the dogs went into their own family, and then they had their own genera and their own species. So if two organisms share any grouping, they also share all the levels above it. Okay. Oh, so if I told you, Felis concolor, that is, I don't remember what that is either, but this is the domestic house cat, and I think that is a serval cat. Anyway, because they have the same genus, that they are also in the same family, in the same order, in the same class, right? They're going to be in the same things. Now, even though they have the same genus, and I've printed that word in that brown color, doesn't mean they are the same species, right? Because species, that is a segregation afterwards. Great. So you need to know about the Linnaean categorization system. What are the three domains of life? There are three major domains of life. And back when I was in school, there were just two. When your kids are in school, there might be four. But right now, there are just three. And the one that you are thinking about all the time when you're thinking about life is this one, eukarya. Eukarya, these are all of the forms of life on planet Earth that have a cell, that has a nucleus, and they also have other organelles like the rough endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus, okay? Anything whose cells have got a formal nucleus falls in the category of eukarya. Then we have got these guys. These are two different domains that are both prokaryotic. So these guys, honestly, if you look at them through the microscope, even a really, really, really good fancy microscope like a light microscope, they look alike. But they're not alike. They actually are very, very, very different from each other. Those two domains of life are the bacteria and the archaea. Remember when we were learning about DNA and we learned about the different codons and the codon chart? When it comes to that little genetic code, bacteria have got a separate way of coding their DNA. The archaea, honestly, they look just like bacteria, but they speak an entirely different language in that code. And the language that the archaea speak is very much like the language that the eukaryotes speak. So these guys, the archaea, look just like bacteria. We're more closely related to them than they are to these guys. Yeah, I said that right. Okay, good. Let's talk about bacterial cells. And when we're talking about bacterial cells, I'm talking about the archaea as well. Bacteria and archaea, they still use DNA for their genetic material. It still is in a double helix. It is used in a very similar way to the way we use our DNA. However, they don't have a nucleus. They do fold up their DNA in a compact little clump, and they keep it in an area of the cell that is called the nucleoid. So they don't have a nucleus. It's not surrounded by a membrane, but they still have a region, and it's called the nucleoid. That could be on next week's quiz too. Now here they show a bacteria that has got a flagellum. They don't all. Here we see a bacteria that is kind of shaped like a pill that you might take, like a capsule. They're not all shaped that way. However, they do all have a cell wall. Their cell wall is not made out of the same stuff that the cell wall of a plant is, though, okay? They are different. Do they all have capsules? No, but they all have a plasma membrane, and their plasma membrane is phospholipid bilayer, just like yours. They do have ribosomes. Their ribosomes are different than ours are, though, and their ribosomes are like the ribosomes that are found inside of our mitochondria, which is why scientists believe that, let's go back here. Scientists believe that there was once an ancient archaea, right? And it had its DNA just in nucleoid here. And then there was an ancient bacteria. I'm going to make him a little smaller. And that ancient archaea swallowed up the ancient bacteria. And then we started getting eukaryotic forms of life. That was a terrible drawing. I'm going to stop here, and we will finish talking about bacteria in the next video.